Good morning, superhumans. I hope you're having a great weekend so far. Good morning, Andy. You just pinged me on the back channel, which is cool. That's going to be very, very useful today. Now, first thing is, this is the first time that I've ever done a live stream using this radio mic, which is currently linked to the receiver plugged into my computer. So, I need to know that people can hear me. It looks like I've got audio levels, but I don't know for sure. This is going to be a bit of a strange one today. Okay, so while people are joining the stream, oh, cool, thanks Kevin. I'll just quickly do my, my Aboriginal awareness shout out for today is the Aboriginal Literacy Foundation. And as you can imagine, the Aboriginal Literacy Foundation provides services related to literacy and also numeracy, and they also do weekend camps which do like cultural immersion sort of things, particularly in working with the Koori people. So, and they operate out of about 150 different locations around Australia, including a very remote place called Marble Bar, which is where my grandfather was a squadron leader during World War II, flying out of a secret airbase there, doing missions into Japan. So, I just put the link to the Aboriginal Literacy Foundation in the chat. Cool. So, today, this is going to be strange, trying a few different things. So, I've been wanting to do a lab tour for a while, and I've already partly recorded a proper lab tour video, which is, you know, one of the ones where I record it and edit it and try to make it all make sense and be a little bit more concise than just rambling live like this. But hey, live lab tours could be fun. So what I've got is, I'm just going to switch cameras for a second. If I switch to that, let's see if it works. Hey, so that camera that you're looking through right now is actually my mobile phone. And from there, you can see back to my Workbench, and this is where I'm streaming from at the moment. So I've got OBS and Notes and Discord and YouTube over there and other stuff that I'll show you in a minute. So for now, let's just switch back to here and we will go for a little tour through the lab in a minute. So as I'm doing this, it's going to be very difficult for me to follow anything that's in the chat, and I'm going to be walking around the room a little bit, but what I'm going to do basically is just give you an overview of my lab setup, show you a few of the different things I've got in here, and you can ask questions about whatever it is that I'm showing you, but please be patient because I may not actually be able to see the question until I come back to the computer. I've got Andy also watching in the stream, so he's going to be grabbing things and sending them to me through a back channel to try to help me from missing things. So let's begin. Well, firstly, let's just say hello to a few people. Guru of Nothing is here. Cool. Hey Grant and Daryl, Frank, Mike. Oh, migraine. Sorry to hear that you were not feeling too good last week, Mike. Yeah, lots of people. James, hello from Milwaukee. How do you say that? Milwaukee? Aaron, cool. And Austin's Creations is here as well. Oh, and Chris. Yes, Raspberry Pi with screen for chat, or time for a TTS live chat Raspberry Pi project. For this sort of situation, I would normally use my phone to follow the chat, but right now my phone is being the camera, sitting away back over there, so I can't do that. Milwaukee, as Alice Cooper says. Adam says hi from the UK, and Kevin is from Atlanta. All right, oh, and Dodgy is here too. All right, so let's see where to begin. As you can tell, I really don't have a plan for this. I've just got a mobile camera, I've got a radio mic, and I'm going to make it up as I go. Alrighty. So, oh, it's warming up in here, getting hot. Let's get rid of that. All right, I'm going to walk away from the computer for a while, which means I'm not going to be able to see. Jerry said, "We're not worthy." No. uh, Party on, Wayne. So, Pokerphone. Let's see. Switch to the overall view. Now, one thing that I'm very conscious of is moving cameras can make people feel really sick. And so if I pick the camera up and I just wave it around too much, what's going to happen is that everybody's going to be feeling quite seasick. So I'm mostly just going to be moving it around, putting it in a fixed position, and then talking about things. All right, so what can you see from that point of view? Okay, so this is looking in from the door of the lab. Like if you just walked in from the back of the garage and you're looking over my shoulder, this is walking in the door, and it's an L shape because this section to my right is cut off, and you'll see that probably sometime down the track. So there's the L-shaped entrance, and then it opens up into a larger room. And the bench, now I'm going to have to unplug a charger. Hang on, because I don't think the battery on my phone is going to last all that long, I've had it plugged into a charger. But now, if we come in through the entrance, you can see the main bench area that wraps around. So it goes around to that far corner. Now, one thing that's not particularly apparent when you're looking at this on video is that this room is not square. That back wall actually comes in at a diagonal because it's on the boundary line of the property, and it's just the way the property works. So that far corner of the bench, that's not a square corner. It's a weird angle, and everything has sort of had to be made to suit it. So when you're looking at it through the camera like this, it looks like you're looking at a straight-on wall, but you're not. That wall is at a strange angle. Okay, so let's start from this area here, because everything kind of comes out from here. In fact, let's just cover that spot, because this is pretty much the core of everything. It's where everything else comes out. So what I wanted to be able to do was have somewhere that I could work on the computer and work on electronics pretty much within arm's reach. What I've had in the past is, and when I say past I mean like 10 years ago plus, was somewhere that I had my computer and somewhere that I had like a soldering iron and tools and everything else set up, and it was really frustrating. So what I very deliberately did when I set this up was make it so that I could be here at the computer, which means I can be looking at, say, design files like in Eagle or KiCad or whatever, and have them open visible on a screen while I'm working on the hardware on the bench, which is right beside it. And probably even more importantly, what I want to be able to do is run, say, my code doing software development. I want to have it all open on the screen here, and have the device that I'm coding on sitting on the bench here, which might be attached to test equipment or bench power supply or whatever, and be able to just do code updates and have that applied directly on here. So having the computer and the electronics area kind of merged together was a very deliberate decision. And the original layout of this room was quite different. I originally had all of my electronics workspace on the left side. It was down this bit of bench, and the reason I did that was that I've got a big window here which I'll probably open up a little bit later so you can see out. And I thought that it would be really useful to have good natural light coming in onto the workbench area, and it turned out to be really counterproductive. So what I ended up doing was, basically it meant that the lighting was always unpredictable. If I was working at night, then I'd need artificial light anyway. And if I was working during the day, the sun could be really hot, it could be too bright and glary, it was just uncontrolled. So what I ended up doing was switching around. Oh, and the other thing, this is really important, is having your workbench directly under a window robs you of the opportunity of having vertical space above your bench. And that is really, really important. So as you can see here, I've got test gear on the first shelf directly above the workbench, tools below, and then other things within reach that I might want to get. And if there's a big window right in the way here, all of this is gone. You can't use that space. And all of the things that you would put there end up having to be put off to the side somewhere or down on the bench, which means they get in the way. So this has gone through a few iterations, firstly in terms of major restructure, like moving things from there to there, but also in terms of rearranging how things are set up on the bench. So, what else? Okay, I suppose we'll have a quick look at the computer setup itself, since that's probably an interesting starting point. Move it just down there. Hang on, I'll try to get it in view a bit better. Alright, so 2 rows of monitors, as you can see, and they're on 2 different computers. This bottom row is all my iMac. So that's the iMac, 27-inch iMac, running to an Apple Thunderbolt display. And then this is I think it's a Kogan brand, like 2K display. So the resolution on all 3 monitors is the same. So basically it's 3 27-inch monitors across the bottom row, and then 3 25-inch monitors on the second row. Those monitors are all connected to an Ubuntu machine, which is down under the desk. Let's see, can you see it? No. It's basically directly below this part of the desk. You would have seen it in the wider shot. And then everything is cabled back through there. And there's a frame you can probably just make out here. There's a bit of timber. So I made a custom frame that fits around the back that'll the monitors mount on. So those are sitting on a frame which is sitting on the desk. And then, oh look, there's Louis sitting on the front steps. So CCTV around the house so that I can see when someone comes to the front door or whatever's going on. That's the inside of the garage, which is just through the doors through there, and the back veranda area, which you can see is getting a bit grubby. I need to clean the lens on that camera. So that camera is actually only about 1 meter away from where I am right now. It's just through the wall right on the outside of that corner of the building, looking sort of diagonally back towards the back of the house. So in a minute when I open up the blinds, we'll see out the window and we'll basically see this view, but from a slightly different angle. Oh, right. Okay, just wondering what's useful or interesting about this. Okay, so computer, I've got a variety of input devices, as you can see. I don't have a mouse. I gave up using a mouse, how long ago? It'd be over 10 years ago, because I ended up having some problems with, I'm not sure if it was carpal tunnel syndrome or something, but I was getting lots of pain in the forearms, and so I did 2 things. I ended up switching to the Dvorak keyboard layout, and I started using a trackball instead of a mouse, and all of the pain's gone away. I haven't had any pain for probably 7 or 8 years. It faded away fairly quickly, and then after a year or 2 of being switched over to using Dvorak and a trackball, all the pain was gone, so that's cool. So what I normally do is I have the split keyboard in the middle, trackball under the right hand, trackpad under the left hand. Then there's a custom keypad which I have set up to send keyboard macros for Eagle. So just press one button and it executes like a series of functions within Eagle, or selects tools or changes layers or whatever I want to do. There is She Who Shall Not Be Named. Oh, and also I should mention, I made this mistake on a previous live stream. I'm probably going to be using a couple of voice commands as I do this walkthrough to show you a couple of things. So if you have one of these devices from Amazon, maybe hit the mute button on the microphone so that I don't do silly things to yours if it can hear this, this coming out. So what else? Other interesting things? Not really. Oh yeah, the 3D mouse, which is awesome. This one was given to me by Simon. So thank you very much, Simon. This is amazing. I went looking for one and I asked for, I'd never used one, and I started asking around to see if anybody had used one so that I could, or had one that I could borrow just to see what it's like, because they're pretty expensive. They're hundreds of dollars. And I didn't want to just buy one hoping that it would be suitable. And Simon said, I've got one that I don't use, so take it. And yeah, I've been using it ever since. Absolutely love it. For Vision 360, this is the greatest thing ever. It's like being able to reach out and grab the model and just manipulate it in however you like. So what I usually do is have, and the reason I've got the two different pointing devices, so the trackpad and the trackball, is that I do gestures on the left hand and select and move and things on the right hand, which I find is also super useful in Eagle. If I'm doing things like schematic or PCB, it doesn't matter, it works the same in both. What I usually do is I have my hands on the two pointing devices, and macOS handles it really elegantly. What I can do is select an object using the right hand, and then I can pinch to zoom and pan on the left hand, and then put it down or manipulate it with the right hand. So I can be using both hands at the same time to be selecting, moving, zooming, panning, that sort of thing, and moving objects around. So that is really cool. This is the microphone that I've been using generally for live streams, and this one was given to me by Grant, Guru of Nothing, so thanks Grant for that. Before using this, I was using the built-in microphone, which was terrible. So the only thing that's annoying about this at the moment is that I've got it on the little tripod stand right in front of me, and that just, it gets in the way a bit. So if I'm, not for the keyboard is fine, but for reaching back here, like grabbing a calculator or whatever. So what I want to do is move that, probably put this on a little boom and mount it up here somewhere so that it's totally clear of the bench. The only other thing that's interesting is I use a program called Barrier so that the keyboard and mouse is shared between both devices, even though one is a Mac and one is a Linux machine. So if I grab my mouse pointer, I've got to find it first. Where is it? Okay, so mouse pointer is down there, and I can scroll it up, and now it's up here. So then I can click on things and move stuff around up there. And I can copy and paste between the two computers. So if I've got something I'm working on here, I can copy the URL and paste it into a browser up here or whatever. And they're also, they also both are on the same Dropbox account. So all their documents are the same. Basically, it's two computers that are as close as they can be to working together as a single computer, even though they're different operating systems. And probably one of the major reasons that I still use macOS as the primary operating system is for Fusion 360. And that can run on Ubuntu really badly under Wine. In fact, I've got it installed on Ubuntu, and it can run in a VM, but it's just a pain. So, yeah. Alrighty, so what else? Oh yeah, label printer. I love my label printer. And that is one of the little tricks that I use to keep everything organized, because as you look around here, you'll see there are labels on everything. So, well, since we're in this area, okay, here's a little tip. What I do is I keep this box really close to me all the time. So this box stays in that spot, so that all I've got to do is, if I'm in this area near my computer and Workbench, I just stand up, grab that box, and I've got access to Ziploc bags and little containers and things. So the general principle is nothing should end up just being shoved aside into a corner and left unknown. If I've got something that, even something fairly transitory, and it's a group of parts and I want to put it somewhere, I can just reach up, grab a bag, chuck it in the bag, print a label, and I have the Dymo software open constantly. So I just type out a label, print it, and stick it on, and everything ends up labeled. And it sounds like it's a really sort of anal way of going about things, but it means that over time you don't end up with lots and lots of random stuff. You end up with everything labeled, and you can look at it and say, oh, that's what that is. So I find that it really helps me to remember things. Like if I've got little display modules, I'll print out a label that's got the resolution and the interface, like whether it's I2C or SPI or whatever, stick it on the bag, and then later I can just grab the bag out and I know exactly what it is. I'm not trying to think back to 6 months ago and thinking, what is this display? Is that 0.91 inch or is it 0.96 inch? I don't know. All right, so moving slightly to the right, to the more of the electronics area, I'm just going to check what my battery level is like on the phone, because I don't know if this is going to be chewing through the battery super fast or not. I don't know, it's not being displayed. All right, so the general electronics area. Yeah. Sit down for this little bit. Oh, one thing I didn't point out is what I actually use those monitors for, but I might get back to that. So this like 1 and a bit meter space is where I spend probably 80% of my time during the week, either sitting at the computer just there or sliding sideways to the workbench right here. I've got it set up with the hand tools that I commonly use across the back. Now the way this camera is working, I've got to get it in pretty close to be able to see anything. So I'm just going to move you in a bit closer so you can get a more detailed look at the workbench. Alrighty. So when I first set this up, I had all of my test gear down on the bench, and there were a couple of problems with that. One of the big problems was cables ended up getting in the way, because if you've got test gear down here and you've got things like leads plugged in, they just inevitably end up dragging across the bench. So what I ended up doing was moving all of the test gear up and putting it up on the first level shelves, and that then let me have little organization containers. So I've got, basically it's just a row of, they're like takeaway containers, but they're thicker plastic. They're a more durable sort of thing for different purposes. And the idea is to keep the really common hand tools organized across the bench. So I can always just reach for a pair of tweezers or screwdriver or whatever, cutting tools, hex, and then wire, as you can see here, easy access. And I've also got a couple of magnets attached along here. Oh, and one thing I should point out is this grey material. I did a video about this, I think maybe 2 years ago. I can't remember. It was when I put it in. This is a static dissipative material, and if I pick up this bit of mat, this is an offcut. It's got the rubberized surface on the top and then a carbon impregnated back on it, which is slightly conductive. So, and that is then attached through to an earth stake. There's a wire that goes through the wall and down into a big metal stake that's in the ground. So there shouldn't be any static build-up anywhere on this work surface. And I've got an anti-static wrist strap just here. So whenever I'm working, I can put that on, and there's a little, what I did was make up a bracket. There's a little bit of aluminium angle. I just cut it and drilled it, and that has got a banana connector in it. So that goes through to the same earth connection as the bench surface. So I can plug myself in there, and the bench surface and I are at the same potential, in theory. So that should work anyway. And I've got some little magnets glued up here so I can attach things. So, you know, scalpel, things that you reach for, just stay up nicely out of the way. Now, one thing that is really handy here is I've attached these two USB hubs up under the bench top, and first I hot glued them on, and then I put screws on the sides to hold them so they're really solid. In fact, I think I'll bring the camera in a bit closer so you can see more of what's going on there, because this is a very useful thing. And I'll bring it into, I'll make it more of a side view so you're not looking at the back of my head so much. So I deliberately went looking for really skinny USB hubs so that I could flush mount them under the shelf here. And they're mounted so that the front is basically flush with the front edge of this shelf. And there are two of them. So these are connected through, one of them is connected to the Linux computer, which is under the bench. The other is connected to my iMac. And the idea with that is that if I'm working on a device, say I don't know, this one, and I want to work on the electronics, basically I can plug this in and power up this device. It's connected to the USB hub, which is linked through to my computer, and I'm right here in front of all of my test gear. So I can have the hardware project on the bench with access to all of the test gear that I want, but it's also linked for data through to my desktop. So I can set something up here, slide across to my desktop, and then do whatever coding I want to do, and then just push the code down to the device which is sitting over here. And that way it gives a super convenient place to plug things in, because normally the USB port on the computer, on an iMac in particular, is on the back of the computer. It's a terrible thing to get to. So extending the USB ports around to the bench is a really handy thing. So if there's one tip you take away, that should be it. It's very cool. Yeah, little device for monitoring power for USB, and what else? Oh yeah, and similarly I brought through Ethernet. This is a little Netgear gigabit Ethernet switch, one of those little metal case desktop switches, and I've got it, once again, it is glued and screwed under the bench, and that's connected through to my through to the wiring closet where the Unify switches are. So I just heard a ding. I don't know what that was. Don't know if someone's trying to get in touch with me or not. Right, so once again, because I do a fair bit of work with power over Ethernet, you know, devices like this, it's got Ethernet on it, it can be very handy to be able to just plug into Ethernet right at your bench, instead of having the Ethernet socket down on the wall. Like, I've got Ethernet sockets on the wall as well, but instead of having to get out a cable and find where to plug it in and crawl under the bench, if you've got Ethernet right here, it means that I can grab a cable, plug it in, and I'm on the LAN. So I can have a device here connected to the host computer by USB, plugged into the LAN, and I've got a power over Ethernet injector here, so I can run, so I can plug that into one of these bench power supplies and do power over Ethernet as well. So that's what I use for like DIY power over Ethernet, or for proper PoE I've got injectors and other things to use for that purpose. Other things, little extractor fan here. All this does is move fumes away from my face. It's not actually a filter. I'll turn it off so you can see it a bit better. It's just a computer fan on a little laser cut base with a weight on the back and some LED strip around it for illumination. So what I can do is just put that, like if I was working on this board, I can put that right in front of it, turn it on, and it gives me good illumination for what I'm working on, and it also sucks the fumes back and blows them away from me. so the fumes aren't just rising up into my face. So if I'm sitting here with the soldering iron working on something, the fumes are being taken away. Now, you might ask why I'm not doing filtering at this point, and that is because there is a second system for that. I've got this just to pull things away from my face, so this is right at the point where I'm working. But there is also, let's see if you can see it. Oh yes, you can if I move the microscope out of the way. And if I pull the cover off, so this big round pipe here, it's a little right angle, it ducts down. I'll move that out of the way as well. You can see that pipe ducts down below the bench, and then underneath this bench, up near the wall, there is a bit of PVC conduit that runs all the way around the room, and it picks up several points like this. There is a T-piece directly below the bench here, and that goes to an extraction fan, which then vents out through the wall. So any fumes and things that are generated in this workbench area, the idea is that this will pull it away from my face, and then this sucks it down the tube and it goes out and gets vented. So hopefully I don't have too many fumes sitting right in front of me. And I've just got a 3D printed cover for it so that I can close it up when it's not in use, and also if I want to redirect the exhaust elsewhere, because that same exhaust system runs around the bench, goes down to my my reflow oven and my laser cutter. So by blocking this off, it means that more of the suction comes out of the other points. Okay, I think I had better have a look at some of the comments, because it's been a while since I've looked. Oh, one other thing while I'm here, before I move the camera. This test gear is blue tacked in place, which might sound a little bit strange, but the idea is to have it set up so that the control surfaces are all flush, things like these bench power supplies and this multimeter. So this multimeter is a Unity UT61E, which is just a normal handheld multimeter. But what I've done is hot glued a couple of angle brackets onto the back of it, and I've also drilled a hole in the back and put in a connector for a bigger battery pack. So that is powered by a 9-volt battery pack, which is running AA batteries, and that should last, I don't know, probably a decade before it ever has to be changed. And the angle brackets are then blue tacked down to the bench. So it's standing up vertically, but it's actually solid, and that means that I can just reach up, turn the dial. Oh yeah, and this one, I hacked this one to add a backlight to the display. So normal UT61Es don't have a backlight, this one does. So I can just reach up and turn the dial, I can press the buttons on it, I can change the leads, and the multimeter doesn't move, it just stays there. So it's like I've basically taken a handheld multimeter and turned it into a bench multimeter. And these power supplies are also blue tacked down, so I can push buttons on them and nothing moves. Same thing with the Crow. It's not a Crow, it's a scope. It's a digital scope. So I can push buttons, nothing moves. And okay, let's have a look at questions, and then I'll get back to a bit more about what's on this bench, and then maybe eventually we will get to other parts of the room. For now, let's just aim it there while I check out what the questions are. Oh wow, I've run out, they went off the top of my screen. So, Mike asked, what's the name of the tool for machine mouse keyboard sharing? This one I'm using is called Barrier. And Cable Tie said there's another one that he's used called Synergy. Yes, I've used Synergy in the past as well. That was actually what I used to use. And my memory might be wrong here, but I think that Barrier may be a fork of Synergy after Synergy went commercial. Something like that anyway. Let's just switch back to the front camera. In fact, I'm going to put the phone back on the charger so that we can then go for another lab walk in a couple of minutes. Yes. James said I've been running Synergy for years. It's amazing. Yeah. Yeah, I think Barrier is the proper open source fork of Synergy. Yes. Oh, Peter said, how is this desk held up? There's no legs. And Dodgy said, white legs there, Peter. Yeah, okay, so this bench is cheap rubbish. That's because I made it. So once we'd done all of the big renovations on the house, we were out of money. And my original idea, what I really wanted to do, was to go to somewhere like a kitchen company, someone that does proper cabinetry and benches and things, and have them fit it out. So it would be like proper kitchen bench material, and it would all be really fitted perfectly and very nice. But it just would have cost too much. Sorry, I'll just move this microphone. It's falling down. Okay, so what I ended up doing was getting some, just some pine and screwing it around the wall, and put some, this is yellow tongue floor sheeting. So it's basically like chipboard essentially. And I cut it to the right dimensions and sat it on the strip, the horizontal strips, and then put in some frame underneath. So there are legs, and the legs are sort of spaced around. One of the things I did have to do was this part of the bench just near where I'm sitting. So the electronics bench that you saw a moment ago, that has got two big pieces of steel that run all the way across. And in fact, you can just see it on the edge of the camera here. So this front bit of the bench, if I push down on that, that does not move at all. It's like solid as a rock. That's because there are two steel sections under the front that run from the leg, which is just near me, to the leg down the far end to make the bench really solid. And the reason to make the bench solid is to make the microscope mount rock solid. Okay. Yeah. So, Andrew asked about the mechanical attachment. Hard drive magnets. Yes, the magnets that I've got just along the front of the edge of that shelf, I pulled out of old hard drives. Oh, and James said, I really like the under-desk and under-shelf lighting. Is that LED strips you got in China? Yeah, I just put LED strips everywhere. So I've got LED strips under each of the shelves, and that helps to illuminate down onto the bench. One of the things I really wanted to do was get as much light as possible into here. Maybe I'll point the camera up at the ceiling a bit later once I'm back on the mobile camera, because I'm in the process of changing over to a new type of lighting panel. But one of the calculations that I did when I was planning this was lumens per square meter, or whatever the unit is. And I looked at what is normal in things like office environments, and basically I took that and then went way brighter. I wanted to make sure that there was enough light in the room that everything would be well illuminated. And then once I discovered there were dark spots like under the shelves, I put LED strip under there to brighten those up. And there is LED strip underneath the bench as well, going down towards the floor. Oh, there are some interesting aquarium questions there, but maybe they'll be for another time. So I'll just keep going with the lab tour at the moment. Dodgy asked, do you have blast gates on each of your points? I'm not sure what that means. Maybe you could clarify that. If by points you're talking about PowerPoints, then no. If that means the little flaps that cover the PowerPoints. One of the other things I did is because this particular room was being built specifically for use as my lab, I had it wired up when the electrician was in, like at the framing stage. So there are 3 power circuits dedicated to just this room, and there are 72 power points in this room. So, and almost all of them are 4-way systems. So I'll show you that. You'll see that in a little bit. Because my aim was that no matter where you were in the room, you should never be more than 1 meter from a power point. And that has worked out pretty well, but even that has not been enough. James asked, are those PSU kits or modules? All right. Oh, and there are some other things about test leads. Yeah, there are some good questions here. Things I've been thinking about showing and hadn't got to yet. So thank you for prompting me on those. I'm just moving the portable camera back into place so I can show you a couple of other things. Let's see if that camera is still running. Yes, it is. All right, so yeah, these are the hard drive magnets that were mentioned earlier. Yeah, there were a couple of other things I wanted to talk about. Whoops. I'm probably making everybody seasick again now. I should have moved it before switching to it. And right about there. Okay. So, the way I've got this organized is in distinct layers. So, Workbench, common hand tools, connections, so USB, grounding, Ethernet, etc., test gear, and then commonly used bits and pieces. So solder reels, rework, all sorts of things that I always want within reach. And so yeah, this is where there are LED strips under each of these edges. You can see the ones there, but there are also LED strips under that edge. There are LED strips under this edge, and that means that there's no dark patch down here. Every shelf is illuminated by the one that's above it. Now, there was something that I was just about to talk about. Now it's gone out of my mind. Test leads, power supplies, that's it. All right, so these power supplies, I'll just turn this on. These are Ryden power supplies, RD6006s, and I love these. They're really cool. I've had several different bench power supplies over the years. These are, how would you classify them? Good quality, cheap, I suppose. They're certainly nothing like a, like a Rygold bench supply or any of the really good name brand ones. But in terms of their general capability, these are really, really cool. They do things like, if I want to set voltage, well, you can have multiple voltage memories, but if you want to set voltage, you just do, VSet 12, enter, and now I've got 12 volts. And if I want to do current, I do ISet 0.5, enter, and now I've got half amp current limiting set. You can use the knob as well, and there's up and down, and it's got Wi-Fi, and there was some video I did a little while ago where I was showing power consumption. I can't even remember what it was. So what I can do is pull up the interface for this on my phone or on my computer, and I can actually control the power supply from the phone. So I can change all the settings on it. You can log power usage. It does charts of current consumption, and you can do data logging and those sorts of things. So I really like these. And also I should point out, there is a link on the Superhouse site, superhouse.tv/gear, Gear, And on that, I've got links to a whole lot of this stuff. Like I've got links to these power supplies and all those sorts of things. So if you want specific things that I'm showing you today, they may well be linked from that page. So yeah, these power supplies, cool. I've actually got about 5 Ryden power supplies. I've got some of the older type. They came out with little modules that you would build into other devices, and so I've got a couple of those, the original ones, and I've got a high current one, and I've got these two, which are the really nice ones. Okay, what else? Oh yes, lead management. Lead management, this drives me crazy. It is probably one of the most frustrating things about setting up a workbench, and I hate it. Leads are the devil. What I've got is, well, as you can see, I've got just one lead from my scope, because most of the time I only use one lead on the scope. Sometimes I use 2. It's a 2-channel scope. But this is just hooked up over a camera mount, so I can flick this down at any time I want it, and I've got the scope lead right here, or I can flick it up and now it's out of the way. And that was pretty much the best solution I could come up with for having the lead easily within reach and convenient, but not sitting on the bench and making a big mess and getting in the way. But other things are annoying. So you can see here, for example, I've got the leads from the multimeter, and can you see it? I might need to move that camera just a little. Angle it up. Oh, you still can't see it. Hang on. I'll move that camera out of the way. You can see there are a bunch of leads that are hanging up here. This is a little laser cut plate that I made, and basically it looks like a whole series of fingers sticking out. It's got some wider slots at the left side, narrower slots on the right, and what that means is that I can just reach up, grab my multimeter leads, and they're right here. And then when I'm done with them, hook them up, and they are there. So, as I said, leads are one thing that really annoy me, but this is about the most convenient that I've been able to come up with. So I've got power supply leads beside it. The leads from, well, one of these power supplies, this goes to an XT60 connector at the moment, but I've got different things that plug in here. The leads from this top power supply just come up here. So if I want to plug something in, or if I want to power something up, I just reach up, grab these, pull it down, and I've got them on my bench, and I'm done, shove them up there, and they're out of the way. And I've got jumper leads and test tweezers and resistance boxes and other things just hanging off that same little strip. So that's probably about the best solution I've come up with so far. And the other lead management thing, I'm just going to bring you back. In fact, I'm going to sort of tilt you sideways so you can see. This is looking around the side of the bench. You can see I've got 2 more of those laser cut little things that are screwed under the bench with a whole lot of leads hanging down. So that's using space that is otherwise totally dead. It's just on the end of the bench, and the long leads hang down behind the monitor. But that's for things that I might reach for occasionally, like there are different USB leads and Ethernet patch leads, adapted like power supply adapters, different things up there. So most of the time if I want a lead, I can reach around there and grab it. But on a previous live stream, I talked about the whole principle of local caching, or local caching, depending on how you pronounce it. So up here, for example, on this, I've got a few of each type of lead. There are a few USB-C leads, a few micro USB, a few USB-A, that sort of thing. But then for each of those, I have many, many more in other places. Okay, other interesting things here. You can see, I'm just trying to angle it so that you can see. I've put a camera on here. This is a drawer slide, so I got this from a local hardware store. It's just the same thing. There are normally 2 of them on each side of a set of drawers so that when you pull the drawers it slides smoothly. I've just rotated it 90 degrees So it's mounted under the top of that frame, and then I've got a camera which slides out, and that looks straight down at my workbench. And that is currently connected to an HDMI capture device. So if I come over to OBS and switch to overhead camera, that is now the feed through that overhead camera. And if you can see, if I slide that in or out, if I slide it out, I get it into the right position. That's now looking straight down into the work area on the workbench. Or if I want to get it out of the way so I don't bash my head on it, I just push it back and slide it out of the way. And then it's out of the way. So I'll switch back to portable camera. So yeah, that's the camera on the slider. And you can see that there is a cable. In fact, there are a couple of cables here. 3 cables. So I've got an HDMI cable coming out of that camera. There's also a firewire cable, and there's a power cable. So it's permanently on power. And then there's this little wiring loom that goes down. So this camera is permanently mounted. It's permanently connected to my iMac by firewire, and permanently powered and permanently HDMI out. So that the output from that camera can also be thrown to that monitor. Alright, let's back up a little bit more. And oh, I just saw that notification. Don't know if you heard the ping on my phone. Chris is trying to send me a video. I can't watch it right now, Chris. Okay. Well, I'm really spending a lot of time just on this little area. I wasn't expecting this. So, other things. The other thing that is really cool about this is the microscope. And I love this microscope. It's such a cool thing. I first got a microscope, I think about 11 years ago, and I got one secondhand from a factory in South Australia somewhere that was upgrading their equipment. The first one I got was a stereo microscope, but it was fairly crude. I used that for many years, and then I ended up getting this microscope, which is on it's on an arm that swings around, so I can move it wherever I want it to go, and it just stays there. It's trinocular with simulfocus, which means I can use the camera and both eyepieces at the same time. You can probably see if I move back, there's another microscope just here. This is another head for this same microscope arm, and it's also trinocular, but it's not simulfocus. So I'll show you that in a moment. That's on a secondary bench. And okay, oh, one other thing. There are lots and lots of little things. The way these are powered, so this little fume extraction thing, you can see it's on this white power lead coming into the back of it here. And if you look at the top of the microscope, the camera, this lead here coming into it, that white lead, there is this white lead which goes to the illumination strip, the LEDs that are on the microscope. And you can see there's another one that's just hanging around loose on the bench here. These are all 2.1mm DC jacks, and they're all wired down to 12 volts. And it's actually the 12 volt power supply coming out of my Ubuntu computer, which is under the desk. And I did this so that I would always just be able to pull out 12 volts at any point and just plug something in. So if I've got a device like this and I want to power it, I just plug that in, and as you can see, it's now powered up. So I've got bench power supplies which I can use for controlled situations, like if I want to be able to select a specific voltage, or I want current limiting or monitoring or whatever. But if I just want to power something and I don't want to have to think about it, I just grab the lead, plug it in, and I'm done. And then everything else on the bench is set up with 2.1mm DC jacks specifically for that purpose. So this little fume extractor thing has just got a DC jack on it, and I've got these like octopus leads just hanging around on the bench in different places. And those are in different places around the work area. So 12 volts on a flying lead, always available. It's very convenient. All right, in terms of soldering gear, you can see I've got the this little Hacko iron. So I've got an FX 888, and there's another FX 888 just down there. So the soldering gear that I've got just here, in fact I'll move this camera slightly. Don't know if that's a better view or not. It's all a bit strange looking at it through the camera instead of actually being here. So for now, I'll just swing this microscope out of the way, and we'll assume we're not using that. So for in the soldering area, I've got the Hacko as my just everyday general purpose iron, and I've also got this chunk of wood, which can be useful for doing hot air real work. So I've got the rear workstation here. I can just reach up and grab it and pull it down. But when using hot air on things like this static dissipative surface, the rubber expands and the whole thing tends to bulge. So a lot of the time, if I'm doing things like trying to remove parts from a board, I'll just pull out this chunk of wood and then sit the target board on there and do whatever I need to do on it. And you can see that there are scorch marks on it from, you know, burning things with the hot air. But at least that way the bench surface is saved. Ah, that's annoying. That is why cable management is really annoying. Things falling down. All right, so that hot air. Then I also have this, which is a board preheater. It's basically like a hot air gun, except that it's inside a box and it blows straight up. And these are little magnetic mounts. And I'll see if I can get you a better view on that. And this is usually used in conjunction with hot air to bring the whole board up to a temperature where parts are ready to pop off, but they're not actually melted yet. So if I was wanting to remove parts from a donor board, for example, one that is dead, and I want to get some parts off it so I can reuse them, what you do is use these little magnetic mounts. I'll spin it around because it's got two different thicknesses. And you mount the board over the little outlet, and if I now turn this on into hot mode, that's now going to be blowing hot air at the bottom of the PCB. I'll turn that off so the noise isn't annoying. But basically what this will do is preheat the whole PCB, and it might bring it up to, well, it's adjustable, but it might bring it up to, say, 120 degrees, which means that the solder won't melt on it, but everything is still, it's quite hot. It's already getting close to the point where the solder will melt. So what you do is bring the board up to temperature, grab the hot air, and then it basically makes the hot air magic. All you do is like touch it on something, and because it's already close to melting point, the solder melts almost immediately, and you just lift the parts off. So preheating the board is a really cool thing to do. So just going to turn that off, chuck that back out of the way. So board preheater, very useful. I use this soldering iron pretty much every day, hot air pretty much every day. The board preheater I might use every week or two. So it's not an everyday thing, just because of the type of work I'm doing. But when I do use it, it's fantastic. It's like having a superpower. It's like magic. Okay, let's slide across a little bit more, and I'll show you a little bit more of this overall bench setup. Now, in fact, I think I'll bring the camera way back to give you more of an overview. There we go. So this is my main workbench that I've just been showing you all of this time. And then over here is a secondary workbench. So this is set up with the other microscope, and it's got its own soldering setup. So there's another Hakko FX888 on the side here. There's a second iron here which has got a larger tip on it. That's for times that you're doing things like soldering on connectors that have got a lot of thermal mass and you want a bigger iron. So rather than changing tips, it's just use 2 irons. And also using 2 irons can be useful in surface mount rework where you're coming in with 1 iron in each hand. And there's solder sucker. In this area I've also got this little device which is a solder pot. It's probably a little bit hard to see from that distance, but this is a heated pot and there's a little bit of solder in the bottom of it. So what this does is basically give you a bath of molten solder. So you turn that on and leave it sitting on the bench, and the reason for using that is things like tinning wires. If you've got a whole lot of wires and you want to strip the insulation off the end and then tin the wires, instead of using a soldering iron, what you do is you heat up the solder pot and then you grab the wires and you just dip them all into the molten solder. So it's a very handy thing for doing tinning of wire ends if you're doing a lot of them. But that's not something that's very commonly used, but it's there occasionally. Other things in view, nitrile gloves for keeping your hands clean when you're dealing with flux and other nasty things. First aid kit with burn stuff in it. Just like napkins for wiping down flux and other sticky things, and there I've got isopropyl alcohol and other stuff that's on a bench up behind the camera at the moment that is also used for doing cleanups. So this is like a second soldering area that's more dedicated to like production sort of soldering rather than rework and development soldering, which is what I would do here. And up here you can see some trays with boards in progress. I did a video a little while ago about these little laser cut PCB trays, and these are some boards. These particular ones, what state are they in? Yes, they've had parts reflowed onto them, but now they need headers soldered on. And part of the reason for setting this up as a second work spot is that my son Tom has recently been doing some work for me. He's really been getting into Fusion 360 recently. He absolutely loves Fusion 360. So he's been doing lots of 3D design, and he's also been doing some assembly work. So I've been getting him to sit here and assemble boards, solder headers on, and that sort of thing. So this gives him somewhere that he can work doing production sort of soldering, which is separate to here. So I can continue doing my regular work, and he can come in and use this at any time and doesn't have to disturb things that I'm working on. Other useful things, stuff that is just kept generally in reach. Thermometer for measuring how hot things get. There's a load. This is really useful when you're working on power supply sort of projects. It's a dummy load and it's programmable. So what you can do is connect this to the output of your power supply or whatever your device is and just crank up the current, and this dumps the power into a big heatsink, and then the fans blow it away as heat. So if you're testing a power supply and you want to put it under stress, you can connect this to the output of the power supply and turn it up and see at what point the power supply fails. So useful device. Then along here I've got test jigs. So this is for products like, well, this is a free and FET tester. I won't go into all of this sort of stuff right now in great detail, but basically this is test jigs for when boards have been manufactured. It's got pogo pins on it and USB connection and power, whatever you need. There's an audible output and pass-fail indications. So once a board has been assembled, you grab the test jig for whatever that particular board is, push it on here, and you get a pass or fail. And Also down here I've got some, can you still see me? Yes, I'm just looking at the field of view. Also down here I've got battery chargers. So I've got an area down here where I've got a few. There's a charger for the battery for my main camera. I've got 18650 LiPo chargers. There's a phantom charger for one of my drones. Oops. There's a bigger LiPo charger for my other drone and stuff. And then just beyond that is another computer. So in the corner, if I move around here, so we've got that soldering workstation. Ooh, where can I get this chair to get it out of the way? And then down past that, there is another computer. So we've got another iMac with another screen and keyboard and everything. So, so Tommy or whoever can work down there, independent of me. And for a while, this area was Angus's workspace. And then he left me to go and work for Espressif, which is very sad. Terrible career move. There's no future in Espressif, Angus. Come back. All right, let's back out a little bit and look at the overall room again while I'm going to plug this back into the charger while I look for more comments. What do people have to say? Back to the front. Alrighty. Now, so many questions. Alright. So, test leads, I showed that. Gyrotech said, how are you running all those monitors? The iMac row is just the iMac plus an Apple Thunderbolt display plugged in on Thunderbolt, plus another display which is also plugged in on Thunderbolt through an HDMI adapter. And then the second one is just a different computer with a graphics card that's got, I think, 4 video outputs. So there's no mystery about that. Just lots of monitors plugged in. Yeah. Oh, okay, so there was some more aquarium discussion, and I think setting up an aquarium channel in Discord could be a good idea. I like that. So we should do that. Stefan said, are you also programming? I saw you design a board completely from scratch. Yes, so I do a lot of coding. In fact, probably, I'm trying to think of the proportions. It varies depending on what project I'm working on. I spent many, many years doing nothing but coding. Back in the IVT days, I kind of left hardware behind for a while. So I started off with hardware back when I was a teenager and through like my early 20s, and then really got into software after that. Ended up doing nothing but coding for a long time, and then sort of moved back into more of a mixed environment, doing both coding and hardware. So Gustavo asked, what do you keep open in each monitor? All right, so let's see, I'll switch. Hopefully you can see from the long view. Where is it? Okay, so, hello, looking over my shoulder again. The bottom row, which is the Mac, that changes constantly because it is whatever I'm working on at the time. So it could be like code editor, or it could be Eagle, it could be Fusion or whatever. Typically when I'm working on a hardware project, what I will do is have open the schematic, the PCB, and the Fusion 3D view at the same time, like on the 3 different monitors, so that I'm seeing the logical structure of the circuit, the physical layout of the circuit, and the 3D representation. And I find that's really helpful. Having all 3 visible at the same time just gives me more insight into how things are working, and I think it's really helped my design over time. The second row is information based mostly, and so those things stay pretty much static. What you can't see, I will move that camera a bit so you can see a bit better. Prepare to be seasick. Here we go, going for another walk. So what you can see on the bottom row is how I have it set up when I'm live streaming. So you can see I've got OBS over here with the preview window, Discord here with chat, although I'm not actually looking at this Discord right now, I'm looking at the other one up on the other monitor. There's YouTube chat, YouTube stats, but that changes. So the interesting thing is across the top. So this is pretty much always how I have these monitors laid out. Discord is up here on the left 2/3 of that first monitor. Then I've got video stream from my 3D printer. So I've got Octoprint and I can watch that 3D printer. And there's a space above it. That is where there is a video stream from my other 3D printer, which is turned off right now. So that's why there's nothing there. Then I have the Freetronics forum taking up the left half of this monitor. Then I have Slack taking up the right half of the center monitor. Then over here, I've got stock level warnings for the Superhouse site and the Freetronics site. So you can see it's sorted, like the focus isn't very good, you can't actually read the text on this, but I've got lists of product codes and then the number in stock, and when it goes out of stock it goes red, and I've got number to reorder, I've got stock value on hand, and this is updating live from, this one is from WooCommerce, this one is from Shopify. So I can see that if I'm running out of stock on some product, it's visible right there. On the right, I've got orders. And I've actually got this in a sanitized mode at the moment. So normally this is showing when the order was placed, the name of the customer, whether it's been paid, whether the order has been packed or shipped, the value of the order, etc. So I can just glance up there and you can see that I've got 2 orders that need to be packed and shipped for Superhouse. Oh, sorry, for Freetronics, and I've got none for Superhouse right now. Now those names are fake, and that is because I have a special live stream mode that I put the status display into, and it puts in fake names so that you can't see real customer data. So I can show that screen and it's not a problem. Normally it's showing the real customer names, and then the screen up above it is just CCTV from around the house. So hopefully that answers that question. All this time has just been around this part of the bench. There are other interesting things in the lab as well. We'll get to that as well. We'll get to that eventually. All right, other questions. So, some call it fun said, do you have some sort of master shut-off switch for the bench? Not directly, although I have circuit breakers for each of the 3 circuits. Oh, there are 3 power circuits plus a lighting circuit dedicated just to this room. And so if I trip something on the bench and it fires a circuit breaker, it will take out that one circuit, but it won't take out anything else anywhere in the house. But I do have things wired up through She Who Shall Not Be Named. So I think I'm about to use it. So if you use the Amazon voice assistant, you should probably hit the mute button right about now. Pretty much everything in here, for example, if I say, Alexa, turn off the office monitors. Okay. You can see the monitors are going off. And Alexa, turn off the soldering iron. Okay. Alexa, turn on the office blind. Alexa, turn on the printer light. So pretty much everything in here is controlled through Sonoffs or equivalent devices controlled by She Who Shall Not Be Named. And that means that it's very easy to do a total shutdown on things. When I'm walking out the door, like at the end of the night, I can be sure that everything is turned off, because most things aren't directly switch controlled. They're done through devices that I can control from the home automation system. Alexa, turn on the office monitors. Okay. That's a weird bug. There's a, oh, it's come back. Yeah, often when I turn those monitors on, this monitor loses power very briefly, and then I've got to manually power cycle it. Right, and this one doesn't come back on. I've got to turn that on by using the old-fashioned method. So, let's move on a little bit. This has all been stuck around this particular part of the lab. And I'll show you, yeah, let's just keep moving around in that direction for now. And I think I'm going to raise this camera. There we go. That's more of an eye level sort of thing. And what you can see now that we've got more of an overall view is more storage directly above the workspace. So when I'm sitting here, I've got things directly within reach, so in arm's reach, that I can get without sitting up from my seat. So anything here I can reach, anything here I can reach. And then there is a second level of stuff where I've got to stand up, but I don't have to move too far. So if I want to grab pin headers in bulk, or modules, or an Arduino board, or whatever, it's all accessible along here. And there is a rudimentary color coding system. So you can see that some of these boxes have got blue stripes on them. That means that it's like a bulk stock box. So pin headers, for example, that's bulk stock of pin headers. I've also got headers down here. So if I just want a couple of pin headers, I can just reach up without getting out of my seat, and I've got pin headers, like a few of everything. But if I want to, if I want like 100 pin headers, I can reach up and grab that box, and I've got everything in there. So in here, I can open this, and then I've got like a 200 piece pack of yellow pin headers and 200 pieces of red and that sort of thing. So bulk quantities of everything. So these containers up here are for more of the things I want to get to quickly. They're in the room and not too far from me, but they don't need to be within hand's reach. You can also see that some of these have got red on them. That means that they are a contracting customer. And in general, what I do is, for things like live streams, if there is a customer who doesn't want it to even be known that I'm working for them, those boxes won't be in here. And but the idea is that red is danger, so I can't really show what's in those boxes on camera. They need to stay away. Then yellow is projects / products, because a lot of my projects end up turning into products. So things like the air quality sensor project, that's yellow, it's there. ESP remote, open adaptive controller, they're all marked yellow because they're projects or products. And then across here I've got smaller storage for little things like debuggers and Sonoff Programmer, D1 Mini, flash memory, all sorts of random things. Oh yeah, one other thing I haven't mentioned is there are 2 UPSs under here. So just down under to my left, near my left foot when I'm sitting at my computer, is 1 UPS, which is running those computers and monitors. And then there's another UPS down here which is running that computer. In fact, there are 2 computers there, and some other stuff is plugged into it. All right, continuing around, keeping on going. So I've got some more storage here, lots and lots of boxes. You can see I've got, in fact, I'm off camera. that wasn't very well organized. Spin this around here. So on this other wall, can you see me now? Yes. So I've got some old parts containers, these old parts drawers with through-hole resistors in them, which I pretty much never use anymore. A few random books and more projects and more stock. Things like Wemos D1 Mini. So I use these boards a lot. So if I want a D1 Mini, just open that up and I've got like 50 of them in there. Regulator modules. You can see all sorts of stuff here. You can see from the labels, riv nuts, all the different sizes of IDC, connectors, touch displays, USB cables, and stuff just piled up because I don't have enough room to put it anywhere. Across the top, there's an old MakerBot Cupcake 3D printer. I think this is number 153-ish, give or take, so the 153rd Cupcake. This is not actually functional right now. It would power up if I plugged it in. Right now the LEDs are illuminated, but it's not actually running its controller or anything. That 3D printer hasn't been run for a few years. A couple of drones. I've got the Dingo car from the Open Hardware Miniconf. So this is the perception module that Andy and John and a bunch of other people, including Pancake Legend, who is here in the chat, did all the mechanicals on this. Many people worked on that. That's a really cool project. So that's a machine learning system running on a Raspberry Pi to turn a remote control car into a self-driving car. So, oops, knocked it off. What else? Oh, camera gear. So I normally have things like my radio mic and extra camera stuff stuck up here where I can grab it when I need it. And a light tent. I've got a couple of these light panels. These are actually meant to be going on the ceiling, but temporarily I'm using them on the side of the light tent. So this is where I can take product photos. If I've got a little module, I can just stick it on the little thing sticking out there, turn on these lights, and the light is diffused. So the idea is you can have the camera sitting here taking a photo of something that's inside the light tent, and you don't get any background because the background is just like out of focus white. You just have the object floating in space, and then it makes it really easy to crop it and get a good photo out of it. Then the Prusa 3D printer. So this is a Prusa i3 Mark III's, whatever, I think. Mark III's, something like that. So it's in a LAC table enclosure, so I can open this up to get to it. And up in the top there, you can see an air quality sensor. I put this in here because I was wanting to see if there was particulate matter coming off the 3D printer. Turned out there's not. This little sensor sitting here inside the enclosure can detect when I turn on the soldering iron over on my bench, but it doesn't detect anything from the 3D printer. So yeah, then I've got, there's the camera in here. So the camera that we saw earlier up on the monitor, that's the camera. So the view that I'm getting looking through Octoprint is from this camera looking at the bed of the 3D printer. Then I've got little reel holders hanging from the top here, so I can have spools of filament, and also the control panel for it is moved off the printer and it's been made external, so from here I can do whatever I need to on the printer without opening the enclosure, so I can preheat it or whatever. And Octoprint is running on a Raspberry Pi, which is on inside this enclosure with a touchscreen. So if I wanted to, I could go print and then select something. So all the things that are on the SD card in Octoprint are available here. So I can go into a directory, select an object. I won't actually do it right now, and hit print. So I can interact with the 3D printer without needing my computer. I can just walk up to it, select something on the menu, hit print, and it starts. You can see I've also got more filament down underneath it. So there's extra filament down under here, and I can either take the filament from here and swap it in and hang it on one of those feeders, those reels, or it can feed up through the bottom. It's probably a little bit hard to see on the camera from where you are right now, but there are corrugated tubes that go from the bottom here. They run through and come up. I might move the camera and show you this. And they come through here so that the filament can be sitting in the bottom enclosure, feed through and come down into the printhead. And then there's more spare filament boxes, etc. Let's move this around. Oh, and just while we're here in this position, I also have this little table in the middle, which is a general purpose table that I use for whatever project I happen to be working on. So let's come back around here. Everybody hold on to your lunches and don't get seasick. And what's that position like? I'm trying to judge this while looking at the other screen that's on the other side of the room. So from here you can see these corrugated tubes. They loop around, come down the back, go through this table, and those corrugated tubes come through to here. So for example, this bit of filament that you can see coming down here, that is coming off this reel here, which is sitting down in the bottom. So if I want to feed that particular filament, all I have to do is grab it and I can push it into the extruder, and I don't have to do anything down here. So I can have multiple filaments down here queued up, available, ready to use. Alright, since we're doing this part of the room, let's continue. I'll move the camera to the other side just so that it's easier to see. Here we go. So continuing from the printer, back around, there's a little bathroom in there. Might show you that in a second. So I've got part storage on here, and this is grouped. So each of these, this is, how many is it? 9 sets of drawers. Each set of drawers is for a different purpose. So I've got passives over here with things like trim pots. This is ICs and transistors, so semiconductors and things here. I've got things like, what have we got? MCP 2551s, so CAN transceivers. I've got CAN controllers and USB to serial chips. I've got transistors and FETs, ATmega32U4s. This is just like small quantity stuff for prototyping. This is not bulk quantity for production, obviously. ADCs, MCP 2307s. Over here I've got more semiconductors. This is sensors like BME 280, BME 680. I've got tilt sensors and piezos, Hall effect sensors, LEDs across the top here, bezels, lots of mechanicals here. So I've got I've got M2, M2.5, M3, M4, M5, M6, and I've got cap head. So I've got multiple head types for each thing, and where possible I've tried to get at least a few of like every single length. So on M2 for example, and then each of these is organized, so I've got nuts, washers, and then the lengths of the particular type. So I've got M2.5 nuts, M2 nuts, M2 washers, and then I've got M2 in 5mm, 6mm, 8mm, 10, 12, 16, 18, 20. So I can just grab whatever size is necessary. And then same for M3, I've got M3 nuts, and then I've got them separated out. So I've got steel nuts, blackened nuts, and then lock nuts and other unusual ones, washers, and then 5, 6, 8, 10, 12, 15, 16, 18, 20, 25, etc. Clinch nuts, lots of mechanical stuff. That's something that I found is really, really useful, because when I'm working on projects, it's pretty normal to have things like resistor kits and capacitor kits and full ranges of those sorts of parts. But when you're trying to make something physical, if you don't have like an M3 10mm bolt and you need one, there's not a lot you can do about it. You just need it, or you have it or you don't. So being able to reach for like every size of every nut and bolt is really good. Then I've got connectors, jumpers, headers, And once again, there are things like pin headers, and as you've already seen, I've got bulk stock of pin headers over the bench, and I've got a little container of pin headers within reach when I'm sitting on the bench. But I've also got more varieties here, 2mm headers, DIN plugs, spade connectors, all the different types of USB connectors. Down here I've got power connectors, so these are all the XT series that are used on things like drones. And I've really fallen in love with XT connectors. I think they're fantastic, so I use those on lots of things. You would have seen earlier that I've got a lead hanging off my lab power supply with an XT connector on it, and I've been using those on robotics projects and all sorts of things. So XT connectors are cool. Buttons, switches. So I've got tact switches, and once again I've got them in every possible length. So 6mm footprint tact switches come in different lengths, and I've got them here in 4.3, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13mm lengths. So if I'm trying to make a device that has to fit inside an enclosure and I need a tact switch to just fit through the enclosure, then I can just come along here and measure it and grab whatever is the correct length for it. Voltage regulators, more stuff. Lots more things. So up here, this is something that really takes a lot more explanation. I'm just going to give you a little teaser at this point because it's actually a really cool thing, and I want to show this in detail. So you can see there's a Wemos camera device there that's not even powered up right now, and there is a Raspberry Pi camera attached to this box. And you can tell that it's a high quality permanent installation because it's attached to a cardboard box that's sitting on a shelf. That Pi camera goes down, there's a Raspberry Pi that you might be able to see just hanging on the edge there. That Pi camera is set up so that it is positioned looking straight at the wall directly above my workbench, and all of the boxes are in the field of view of that camera. And what that can do is then use the Aruco codes, which are fiduciary positioning markers that are on those boxes there. A few people have said, what are with the QR codes? They're kind of like QR codes, but they're a bit different. They're used for augmented reality systems. And what that allows me to do is run, there's a little script that runs on the Raspberry Pi that can return the X and Y coordinates of any of the boxes that are on the shelves. So if I, for example, want to know where is my ESP1SH box, then it can tell me it's at this coordinates, and I know that it's there on the shelf. So that's a system for tracking the physical location of all of the containers in the workshop. And what else? Okay, let's have a quick look in here. Bathrooms aren't that interesting, but there's a little bit in there. Now, I actually can't see what this camera is seeing. I'm just going to try unlocking my phone. Can I do it? Let's see. I'm going to try unlocking the phone. There we go. Okay. I'll take you for a walk through there. Oops. It's a little bit awkward with a tripod. So, little bathroom in here, which is very convenient when working out in the lab. And there is actually a shower just around this corner. But you couldn't have a shower in here at the moment because there is stuff being stored. So there is meant to be a shower screen. We've never actually fitted it. You can see there's another 3D printer. This is the one that's currently turned off. It's plugged into a Sonoff, so I can power this one up remotely, and it's got the camera there on the front of it. So I can then get the feed from it. You can see it's got the touch screen down the front. And it's sitting on a fridge, which is at the moment for solder paste and drinks. So that's, in fact, that's the only thing in it right now is cans of soft drink and tubs of solder paste and little syringes of solder paste. So apart from that, there's a bit more storage. You can see a couple of other lab power supplies there. There's that ridiculous multi-way USB charging box that I showed on a previous live stream. Some more filament boxes and other things. There's another microscope head just down there somewhere. So that's like a little overflow storage space. And let's totally spin things around now. So this is now looking back towards the door that we started from however long ago it was, an hour and a half ago. So coming in, looking at the computer, that's the door that you come in. And then just beside that door you can see there's a whiteboard. So that's a bit of glass that I drilled holes in with diamond tipped drills and painted the back of it white and then turned it into a whiteboard. So other things, okay, so over in this corner, all right, let's just, oh look, Bonnie's out there enjoying the sun. That's it, shake it off, Bonnie. And you can see the auto mower over there hiding, just sitting in its dock. So computer corner there, and then there's the pick and place machine. I've shown that a fair bit in the past, so I won't really go into that today. And then just to the left of the pick and place machine you can see the reflow oven. Actually I've done a whole video about this reflow oven as well. When I first got it, I did a video of the unboxing of this and setting it up. So what I've done since then is put this enclosure over it, and that's as a fume cupboard. And can you see it? Yes, just down here. You see this blue hose? This hose goes down underneath and it goes into that big PVC duct that runs all the way around. And the blue hose comes up to the back and it joins into the back of this fume cupboard. So what I can do is open this up, put PCBs in here, put them in for reflow, and then when the exhaust fan is running, it's sucking the air out from around this so that the fumes aren't just coming straight out into the work area. And then it's got a hole in the top here so I can get to the control panel for it. On top of that, I've got cut tapes, so odds and ends of tapes and surface mount parts. And then there's a tub of reels. It's a little bit hard to see at that angle, but there are more reels of parts for the pick and place machine. What did I just drop? I think I just dropped a bag of FETs on the floor. I did. And then old reel dispensers and things that I don't really use anymore. So coming left of that, oh, and you can see that there is a little laser printer down there on the floor under it and more storage of different things. Coming left of that, you can see my laser cutter, which right now is not functional. And that is because I've got the guts of it hanging out. And I've just been in the process of replacing the controller, and it looks like there might be a problem with the power, either the power supply or the tube. I can't tell which at the moment, but I've got this, what is it, mini Gerbil controller, which I've just been wiring up to it. So at the moment, the guts of the laser cutter are all hanging out. I've got a spare tube up here, which I might end up having to put in. So it's just a little cheapy, it's one of the little K40 Chinese laser cutters. Nothing special at all. It's been totally rewired, but it's just a supposedly 40 watt, but probably less than that cheap Chinese laser cutter. So then back beyond that is my little baby CNC machine. I'll see if I can get this into a position where you can kind of see. Field of view is not great. Okay, so oh, hang on, I just got to put a password in here, so I'll block your view of that. So yeah, this is my little baby CNC machine, which I've been having a lot of fun with over the last 6 months in particular. A lot of the time I just use it like a glorified drill press. Like if I've got something that I want to put precision holes into, like a control panel or an enclosure, then I just load it up with the appropriate size drill bits and write the G-code to drill all the holes at the right place. But I've also been using it for doing cutting, like doing some actual milling of different things. So that is, let's see, home. Yeah, so this is the original power supply for the This has got the stepper drivers in it, and I've got that connected up to a little gerbil shield with an Arduino behind it, which is linked by USB through to this laptop. So I'm just running Universal G-Code Sender as the interface at the moment. So what I do is do the design in Fusion 360 on my desktop, and then generate toolpaths and generate the G-code from that, which gets saved into Dropbox. That gets synced onto this laptop, and then from this laptop I can drive the machine and do whatever the machining stuff is here, the local operations. Now, there is a really big problem with this, and that is, sorry, it's being noisy at the moment because I hit the home button. That'll shut up now. So the really big problem is this is not in an enclosure, and the result is that if I'm actually making chips and not just drilling holes, stuff goes everywhere. So firstly, it's super noisy, so I have to wear earmuffs. When it's cutting aluminium, it just screeches like a banshee. And when it generates chips that go everywhere. So I'm just constantly vacuuming around it, trying to keep it clean. I've got these little shields around it, which kind of help. They keep things contained, but it still throws chips over the edge. So I just keep vacuuming up around it. What I would really like is enough workshop space that I can have more like a mechanical workshop as well as the electronics lab, and build a proper enclosure that this can go in and put a camera inside it so I can remote control it. So I just mount the workpiece and then drive it remotely. So let's kill that to turn it off. Oh yeah, down underneath. Let's see, can you see this? We'll move it down. Just down here, there's a tub of coolant. So there's a big plastic tub here with hoses coming out of it. That is used for both the laser cutter and also for the water-cooled head on the CNC machine. So there are a couple of pumps there that pump the coolant up and then up here. So this is the water-cooled, like there's a water jacket over the motor for the spindle. So it's a water-cooled head. Now, where else to go? I think next thing is I had better check those comments again because I've been ignoring them for a while. Let's see. What questions have I missed? And I've lost my cursor. There it is. Switch back to the front camera. All right. Now, oh yes, I'm so far behind on comments. I've got to figure out where I was up to before. Kevin Hannon asked, what did you use to avoid seeing individual LED lights? And I assume that question is in relation to the LED strip that I've got around the bench. And the answer is, I haven't. I've tried to keep the LEDs under the edge of the bench so that they're not directly visible. You're not looking at the LEDs, you're looking at whatever they're illuminating. So I haven't done anything in particular for that. There's no diffusion on them. They're just regular LED strips. Bartek said, my idea was, where would you chuck away a failed experimental piece of hardware if you were really sick of it? Rubbish bin also somewhere. Yes, okay. I even have multiple rubbish bins. And this is following my whole local caching sort of principle. This is a rubbish bin. And this is what I use when I'm just working on things on the bench. Like if I'm cutting part leads, for example, I'll just grab that, grab a PCB, grab some cutters, and I can go chunk, 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 and I can cut the part leads into there. And then underneath the bench, I have a rubbish container. So periodically, whatever has gone into there, I just tip it into the other rubbish container, which accumulates it, and then that one gets emptied out into the main rubbish bin. And there is also a recycling bin. So down under here, you can just see it. It's mostly empty at the moment. There is a recycling container, so things like things I've printed and don't need, or bits of cardboard or whatever, they will go into the recycling container down there. But the other thing, you're talking about failed experiments and boards I don't want anymore. One thing I do is keep boards, in fact, up here. This container is titled Dead Boards for Parts. And this is full of boards that are things like, there's some ether megas in there, a few other random things. So if there's a board that has blown up for some reason, failed or whatever, I often just keep it if it's got anything useful in it, because then I can harvest it. I can take off CPUs and voltage regulators, and if I need a crystal or a particular capacitor or whatever, I can harvest the parts off the boards. So I often don't throw things like that out, I just keep them. Back to front. Okay, that's interesting. So Dodgy said a blast gate cuts off sections of your vacuum line. You're probably using those caps to do something similar. Yeah, sorry, I didn't realize you were talking about the vacuum. I thought you were talking about power. And I really should do something like that. At the moment, what happens is that I don't have any way of closing off the pickup that goes to the reflow oven or the laser cutter, which means I don't really get enough suction down here near the workbench. I can close off the workbench section to direct all the suction up that way, but I can't do the reverse. So it would be nice if I could isolate parts of it. And 50 Hertz said, did you design this setup from scratch, or has it just been a continuous improvement? Yeah, well, continuous improvement. Things have changed a fair bit over time. Like as I said right at the start of the stream, you may not have been here, I originally had my electronics work area under the big window so that I could get natural light in, and then I ended up switching it over to this side so that I could get more bench space. So, Kevin asked, what color temperature on the LED lighting? There are two answers to that. One is that the LED strips, which I've got around here, are actually alternating. I've got warm white and cold white. So the bottom strip is cold white, then I've got warm white, then cold white, and I don't even know why I did that. I think I just ordered random things over the years, and then I just used them. But the overhead lighting, so this is something I didn't talk about earlier. I mentioned it, that I was going to. The lighting in the room. Now, how do we show this? I'm going to switch back to the other camera and point the ceiling. I'll point the camera up at the ceiling. Now you can see there's a skylight right in the middle, obviously, but you can also see a couple of different types of light. So there are these strips here. These are cheapy LED strips that I got from China, and they fail fairly quickly. I've had a few of these fail. Originally I had fluoro tubes here, and then I replaced them with these LED strips. Those LED strips started failing, so then I bought a bunch of these, and these are good quality Osram light panels. They are the same size as a ceiling tile in an office building. So these are meant to be a drop-in replacement for office lighting. And what I did was 3D print some clips so that I could surface mount them. And so far I've just replaced the one directly over my workbench and computer, as you can see there. And I haven't yet replaced the others. But I have enough of those to replace all of the lights in the lab. And in fact, two of those panels right now are vertically standing up on either side of the light tent. But those are going to be relocated up onto the ceiling. And in terms of the color temperature of those ones, I can't actually remember. At the time, I did some looking into it and figuring out what would be the optimal color temperature. I think it's sort of like a mid. It's not really a cold white, and it's not really a warm white, which is a very yellowish sort of tinge. So, for cable management, Dodgy Brothers said it'd be nice to have something like a retractable lead, but might have too much strain on it. Yeah, there are some things you can get that are used in on assembly lines that are typically, there are tools that people pull down from over their head, use them, and then let them go, and they just hang conveniently in reach. But that would be a whole lot of work. And James asked, why haven't you gone wireless yet? I don't know what that's in relation to. Is that poking fun at my wires not Wi-Fi video? I don't know. Yeah, and Johnny said kind of hard power injecting over Wi-Fi. That is a tough problem. So Gustavo said, what are the bears over the monitors? Aha, good question. Alrighty. Back to here. For those that didn't notice them before, you can see there's a little blue bear up there, and there is a little orangish coloured bear up here. And that little blue bear was mine when I was a kid. I don't know how old I was when I got it. I might have been, I don't know, I was probably 3 or 4. Pretty small anyway. And that was like my favourite toy when I was a little kid. And it ended up staying at my mum's place for decades. And then I came across it some time ago and grabbed it and stuck it up on top of the monitor because it's kind of a like a childhood memory thing. So that was a nostalgic one. This one is from one of my kids, and I think it came from a school fete, but it was kind of symbolic because it's working and repairing things. So he's got a little badge on the front that says "Repairs for Bears," and yeah, BK Trades, Mini Kids, I assume. I don't know, but it just seemed cool because he's someone that makes things, and one of my kids got that, and so I stuck it up there. And you can see up there, Dad's toolbox is one of the other things. I think my son Tom made that when he was probably in about grade 1, and it's just, you know, a little memento thing. They're probably hard to notice, but I've got quite a few little mementos stuck around the office. There's a little post-it note up there behind the connectors, or behind the cables, which I think was written by my daughter when she was very little. And it was, I got it there because it's cute, because it's like it's one of her very first attempts at manipulation, because it says, I want money, I like daddy. So she thought, well, if I say to daddy that I like him, maybe he'll give me money. And there are a few other things that the kids have made that are stuck like around the walls and things from their primary school days. All right. I've got to try to get through some of these questions. What? It's 11:54. That is ridiculous. Where did this time go? I'm going to try to skim through a few more of these questions to get closer to being caught up. So, Gustavo said, how do you power IoT devices around the house? For most of them, I have some kind of, well, it really falls into 3 different categories. They are either powered over Ethernet, so PoE. They are powered by local power supply, typically using something like a phone charger, so for 5-volt supply, or they are battery powered in the case of Zigbee devices. But I have all of those different things. And Adam said, how is that pick and place machine? It's good, generally. I will probably show you. I'll point the camera back at that in a minute. So Six Knot said, what sort of work do you do for a living? These days, I do contract engineering. So I do product development, create prototypes, So I take someone's idea and make it physical. I've got a number of clients, a couple of whom I mention on these live streams, things like you can see the water cannon robot project behind me for T-Rex water trucks. Those sorts of things can be visible and I can mention them because my client, Simon, is fine for it to be mentioned. Obviously, I don't show the designs and the work that I do for him in terms of how it works, but it's okay to say that it's there. I have other clients who I can't even name because it's under NDA, and I do hardware design and firmware development and those sorts of things for them. So that, and also selling products, but I don't really make money out of selling the products because the cost of assembling and the time involved in things like packing and shipping orders and all of the overheads with doing that sort of thing just means there isn't really much margin in it. All right, so Genomini, I'm sorry, I've tried to pronounce your name on previous live streams and I can never figure it out. It could be Genomine, it could be Genomini, I'm not sure. Where do you keep all your Arduinos and PCBs? So many places. I have, what I've shown you today is just my electronics lab area. This is only a small percentage of the product storage and all that sort of thing. Through that white door that you saw on the camera earlier is the back of my garage, and the garage has floor-to-ceiling racks that are stacked with boxes and boxes and hundreds more of those plastic containers that are on the shelves directly above my bench. That's a tiny percentage of the containers and the storage that I have. Most of the bulk stuff is out in that area. It's not here in the lab, which is stuff that I'm more typically working on continuously or through the day. Daryl said, I was going to say something about my microscopes. Yeah, okay. Microscopes are a really interesting thing, and given the time, I'm not going to do it justice by going into it now, but I have strong opinions about microscopes, so I will talk about that. But I think maybe I'll talk about that on a future live stream, and we can go into that in a bit more detail. So Adam P said, wonder how the PNP is working. Yeah, it's working pretty good. There are a couple of things. It's an ongoing project. My pick and place machine is halfway between being a tool and a project. And I actually spend a bit of time working on it, trying to improve it and make it work more effectively. Whereas if I had a pick and place machine as a tool, I would want it to just work. I don't want to ever have to think about it. I want to be able to just put boards on it, turn it on, and run it. So this is an interesting project. It's been evolving over a number of years. So Mike O'Connor pointed out also Linux CNC. Yeah, so I could have used Linux CNC to drive the CNC router, but I'm not. I'm using Gerbil and Universal G-Code Sender. So James said, what's that black thing with the cream box above it under the bench? Oh, that is a power supply. The black box, let's switch back to the other camera. Maybe you'll be able to see it without me having to move anything. You can just see it. If you look down here, you can see the cream box. That cream box has a switch mode power supply in it. That connects through behind the bench and it comes up and it drives these two lab supplies. So that's what I use typically for working on the bench. What the cream box is sitting on is a black box, which is an enormous transformer. It's probably out of a welder or something like that originally. I don't know, but it's rated to some ridiculous number of amps. And that feeds to another power supply. So that I use that if I'm wanting to do things like run high power motors and then, oh, look, I've got a visitor coming in. Hey, if you come in, you're going to be on camera. You are on camera. So this is my daughter Amelia. She's just brought me some coconut ice.
It's very crumbly.
Okay, I'll be careful eating it. In fact, I'll leave until after the live stream. I'm almost out of time. So that big power supply I use when I'm wanting to do things like run large motors on robotics projects. I can only pull 6 amps from these bench supplies, but I can pull probably 30 amps out of the other one. Lost my cursor again. That is a continuous problem with this setup. And okay, so I got a message from Andy saying people want to see and hear about the pick and place machine and Linux CNC. Yeah. Yeah, given the time, I'm not going to go into the whole pick and place machine, but what I will do is pick up the camera and point it at the machine so that you can at least look at it in the last few minutes while I'm wrapping up other questions. Let's see, where is the good position for it? Right about there. Yeah, so you can see it's powered off at the moment, so I can just drag it around. There's nothing stopping the steppers from moving. You can see it's a dual nozzle system. It's on a belt, so like a push-pull thing. So one nozzle goes up when the other goes down, which is kind of like what's called a Peter's head arrangement in the Open P&P community, and that can move around. It's got the little hollow shaft steppers for rotation, feeders across the front here. So you can see I've got reels down under here which come up into these feeders. So these are the auto feeders. And then I've got fixed position feeders mounted on here. The target PCB goes on here and it puts all the parts on it. You can see a little optical fiducial marker here and more reels on the side that just passively feed into these little slots. So I'll leave that pointing at there. Oh, look at the, you can see flickering under the bench. That's the underbench LEDs, and it's just the frequency that they are running at. You can see the strobing effect on the camera. I actually can't see that unless I look at it through the camera. So it's just a weird thing to do with the refresh rate. So those, okay. Incognito said the picture on the left looks like a wedding photo. What's the picture above the light tent? Oh, cool. Okay, so I will show you this because this is actually cool. Firstly, yes, wedding photo on this side. And you can see my very cute wife there. And over this side, this, I can't actually see on the camera whether I'm showing the right thing. I'll try to get it a little bit closer. So this is a drawing that was done by my grandfather. So right at the start of this live stream, I mentioned that my grandfather was a squadron commander, a squadron leader deployed at Marble Bar during World War II. So he was a pilot, but he also did engineering drafting, and then he became a doctor. And this was done, so 1917, this is the connecting, it's the large end of the connecting rod for a steam loco. And he did this drawing as part of his examination for mechanical drafting, I think it was. And he would have been, I think, 17 years old when he did this. So that was drawn 1917, so 103 years ago, which is pretty cool. I really like that. And I've actually got a few of his drawings because my dad saved them and he's kept them in storage, and this one was framed. I've got some others that aren't framed, but one thing that I would really like to do is maybe recreate his drawing in Fusion 360. so that we've got the old style hand-drawn 1917 version of the image and have the 3D 2020 CAD version of the exact same thing. That's something that's been on my to-do list for a little while. But I've got some of his other drawings as well, which are also cool. So Frank asked what 3D printer I'm using. The one that I mostly use is a Prusa i3, but I also have that Mendelmax, which is the one sitting in the bathroom that I showed earlier. It's not really a Mendelmax anymore. That's how it started life, but I've modified it so much that it's only half Mendel now. James asked, are those glass doors on lac tables from IKEA too? No, that is just polycarbonate that I cut to size. So it's just sheets that I got from Bunnings and then 3D printed the brackets and things to hold all the tables together and then mounted it on that. So I am really out of time, but I'm going to try to get through these last couple of questions. So Xiam said, can you please recommend a laser cutter for my workshop? Now that is a super open-ended question, and my summary, if you can afford it, is don't get one of the cheap K40 Chinese lasers like I've got. It's much better to go for something with a bit more quality. I've spent so much time messing around with this K40 laser over the years that if I'd spent an extra $1,000 or so back when I got it, I probably would have saved myself more than $1,000 worth of time. In fact, I definitely would have saved more than $1,000 worth of time. So that's probably a subject that's too big to go into right now in terms of specific recommendations. It also comes down to things like the size of the workpiece that you want to be able to fit, whether you need to be able to do continuous feed through the side, like for long workpieces, whether you want a rotational axis, and also the type of material you want to cut, which will dictate the power and other things. So, Ecognito said, how high are your ceilings? I don't know, just a regular sort of height. I think it's, I actually don't know. I haven't really thought about that. Probably 2.5 meters, I'd guess, maybe. Frank said, where did you get the printer housing? Yeah, that was made out of lac tables and other pieces. So there is if you look for Prusa lac table, you'll find plenty of guides on how to do that. It's a really common thing to do. I just made mine a bit fancy by putting illumination in it and externally mounting the controls and all of those sorts of things. So Rubimar said, was my pick and place assembled or purchased? It was assembled, and a lot of it is my own design. So it's evolved over the years. I did a talk about this at a conference a few years ago where I showed an earlier version of it, but it's changed dramatically since then. The frame has been rebuilt multiple times, and yeah, lots and lots of changes to it. And oh, what desk chair do you use? Scott asked. Okay, so I'm just about out of time and questions, but I do have I have opinions about desk chairs as well. And I'm going to show you something. So I'm going to spin back around here, and you can see these two desk chairs. And then I'm going to grab this and switch. So this desk chair. Now, for many years, what I would do is go and buy the typical Officeworks desk chair, you know, the $150, $180 desk chair. And this is probably one of the better ones that's like that. But look at this, you can see it flopping. If you spend between like $100 and $200 on an office chair, within 6 months, that's what's going to happen. And this, as office chairs goes, this is actually a good one for a cheap one. And then, so what I would find myself doing is I'd get an office chair and it would last maybe 12 months or 18 months, and then it would just be so bad that I have to get another one. And then about, I think it was 9 years ago, I thought, stuff this, I'm just going to get something good. And I ended up buying 2 of these, and I ended up spending, it was a really painful amount of money at the time. I think these chairs cost about $600 each, and I got 2 of them, but they're really heavy and very solid, and even after 9 years, it's basically as good as the day I got it. And the way I figure it is, I'm going to be sitting in this chair for, I don't know, between 40 and 60 hours a week, and it works out to be thousands of hours a year over the space of multiple years. So firstly, it needs to be comfortable. It's got to not flop around, and there are certain things that I've learned that it's worth spending extra on. And it's pretty much anywhere that you as a human interface with something else, like keyboards. Get a good keyboard. Input devices. Get good input devices. Monitors. It's all of the things that you physically have to interact with. So things where you have to touch it, sit on it, look at it, those are really the places where if you spend a little bit of extra money, it might seem painful and excessive at the time, but then 2 or 3 or 4 years down the track, you will have got the benefit of that better quality. And I think spending the money in those places probably gives more benefit than spending it in other places that might sound like it's going to benefit you, like a faster CPU or whatever. So anyway, that's just my opinion. Okay. And I think this is going to have to be the final question. James said, are your kids going to school from home these days? Yes. So my daughter, who just came in earlier, is studying fashion design, and she was previously going into the city to go, well, depended on the schedule, what the particular term was, but most of the time she was working from home anyway with the way her course was set up, and now they've gone entirely online. And my son Tom, who is currently doing year 10, is currently 100% online as well, and has been for a while. So we've been really lucky that our kids are at ages where they can deal with this situation very well. I know that a lot of people are having so much trouble with kids at home constantly and trying to get them focused and motivated, and there are emotional side effects of being in the isolation that we're in at the moment. But we've actually been really, really lucky that our kids have dealt with it very well in terms of their temperaments and also the stage they're at and the level of independence that they have. So that has been really good. All right. Thank you very much to Pancake Legend. So that's Andrew from the local hackerspace. Also Frank and Gustavo for super chats. I really appreciate it. Thank you very much. So I am going to... Wrong one. That one. So I am going to call it a day. I don't know, this kind of went how I expected it would, and it kind of didn't. I feel like there is so much more that I could talk about in terms of the way this lab is set up, and 2+ hours has gone and I still have more to say, but oh well, we can do it again sometime. And the good thing is that now that I've got my camera working through OBS, I can use my mobile phone as a portable camera. I'll have much more flexibility in future. So on future live streams, if something comes up and we want to talk about the microscope or whatever, then I can just grab it and we can go portable instead of being fixed with this camera that I've been using up until now. So thank you very much for coming along and visiting my lab, and have a fantastic week. Make sure you jump on Discord if you want to talk about any of the things that we've been talking about today. And I'll stick a link into Discord. Oh, the main camera is the only lagging one. Yeah, I have a feeling that there are probably synchronization issues because I'm using the radio mic and the camera through HDMI capture, and the other one is on the video stream. It's all a bit of a mess. I need to work on my my streaming setup a little bit. So yes, as James says, go and make something awesome. Thank you very much. I'm going to eat the coconut ice that my daughter brought in earlier and go and get some lunch. So thank you very much for coming, and I will see you all either next week or in the Discord. So see ya. Go and make something awesome.